From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President, with Janelle Carter.
Welcome to another edition of This Week with the President, a weekly news magazine which provides you with an in-depth look at the policies, programs, and work of the President of Guyana in his quest to realize the good life for all Guyanese. I'm your host, Janelle Carter. In the news this week, President Granger underscores need for protection of small states in maiden UN address. New U.S. Ambassador credited. Guyana has achieved all its objectives at meeting with UN Secretary General, which was attended by President Maduro. After months of tension between Guyana and Venezuela over Guyana's exclusive economic zone, a territory west of the Essequibo River, the heads of the two countries came face to face at a meeting facilitated by United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon during the just concluded UN General Assembly held in New York. President Granger made it clear that Guyana is not prepared for another round of bilateral talks in relation to this issue. Instead, he informed those present that the time has come for this matter to engage the attention of the court.
Guyana does not wish that this obnoxious territorial claim should obscure the prospects of peace and obstruct the possible growth of our country for the next 50 years. We need a permanent solution in order to avoid the fate of perpetual peril and penury. Guyana seeks a juridical settlement to this controversy. Guyana reposes its faith. Guyana places its faith in the international system of peace that was promised by the Charter of the United Nations nearly 70 years ago. We want to bring an end to Venezuelan aggression. We want to develop our country, all of our country, in accordance with international law.
President Maduro, during his address at the UN, sought to defend his country's military posturing, claiming it was an operation to fight against drug trafficking. Notably, the Venezuelan head of state offered very little explanation in relation to the decrees he had issued and the aggression that has been directed to Guyana.
The Venezuelan position is based on the Geneva Agreement, and they felt that they were seeking some resolution through the Geneva Agreement, but they avoided the fact that the matter was resolved. It was settled finally in 1899. The Venezuelans were unable to provide any evidence that the 1899 award was void, that it was null. And we, on our side, in the Guyana side, we felt that the controversy was essentially a legal one, and we asked for a legal solution. So the Venezuelan really had no case. In addition to that, it was the Venezuelans which withdrew the ambassador from Georgetown. It is the Venezuelans which refused to give our nominee for an ambassadorship, Ms. Cheryl Miles, agreement. It was the Venezuelans which held the military maneuvers on the border. It was the Venezuelans which promulgated the decree on the 26th of May. It was the Venezuelans which sent a naval corvette into our waters on the 10th of October 2013. So all of the provocations come from Venezuela. There has not been any lack of conversation on our part. The last visit took place in August 2013 when President Maduro himself went to Georgetown. So Guyana has always been willing to speak. Presidents have exchanged visits over the years, but we have arrived at a situation in which Venezuela is making a claim, a spurious claim, and it has no evidence to support the claim.
President Granger is confident that taking the judicial route to bring a permanent solution to this age-old threat will yield a ruling in favor of Guyana. Venezuela has no evidence to support its claim that the 1899 tribunal award was invalid.
The basis of Venezuelan claim is that the 1899 award was invalid. And I'm confident that there's no evidence whatsoever to indicate the invalidity or the nullity of that award. And that is why we feel we should go to court, because Venezuela is trying to avoid going to court. Venezuela wants to embark on another round of bilateral talks. But we've talked for 50 years and gotten nowhere.
I am not confident that such a settlement could exist outside of the court. It's a legal problem. It has to have a legal solution. It is not a political matter that we could negotiate. I cannot overturn the award of an international tribunal that gave Venezuela 13,000 square miles of land. That is not within my authority. I am obliged under the Constitution to protect the full territorial space of Guyana. That's an article of the Constitution. I don't have the right to diminish the Constitution. I can't embark on a process that could result in the diminution of Guyana's land space.
The meeting yielded a positive outcome whereby the Venezuelan head of state agreed to accommodate a team from the UN to conduct investigations, as was done in Guyana in August. President Maduro also reserved his earlier position and committed to having his ambassador return to Georgetown and to accept Guyana's ambassador designated Cheryl Miles. However, Guyana continues to push for a final resolution on this matter, since the development of Essequibo is critical to the development of the country. Apart from addressing the Guyana-Venezuela controversy, raising Guyana's profile on the global arena and forging alliances, strengthening diplomatic ties with UN member states were also on the President's agenda during the UN General Assembly. The President and his delegation held several important meetings on the sidelines of the summit. Notably, an agreement was signed between Guyana and the Russian Federation, which will pave the way for visa-free travel for citizens between the two states to stay for a maximum of 6 months. President Granger held special meetings with President of the Inter-American Development Bank, Luis Alberto Moreno, and Secretary General of UNISAR, Dr. Ernesto Samper Pizano. Bilateral talks were held with Angola, Cuba, Sweden, Colombia, Chile, the Netherlands, Tanzania, and India, during which he gave Guyana's commitment to strengthening diplomatic relations with these countries and lobby for support against Venezuela's aggression. The vulnerability of small nations such as Guyana cannot be downplayed, for climate change to threats to sovereignty and economic development. But even while small states remain vigilant and exercise fiscal prudency, the support of global bodies such as the United Nations is vital in order for them to rise above those vulnerabilities and achieve economic growth. This was the premise of President Granger's maiden address to the United Nations General Assembly. The Guyanese head of state believes that the international community must demonstrate the capability and the commitment to provide an effective deterrent against domination by larger, stronger states.
The questions which small states ask of the United Nations on this, its 70th anniversary, are: how will our peoples be protected from foreign aggression? How will our territories be safeguarded from invasion? How will peace among nations be preserved? How will the independence of the new states be sustained? The Charter of the United Nations enjoins this organization with the responsibility, and I quote, to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice and international law, adjustment or settlement of international disputes, end of quote. Mr. President, this responsibility is essential to the existence and survival of small states that are threatened by powerful states.
The President's address also spoke to the aggression that Guyana has been facing from neighboring Venezuela, which is claiming 2/3 of Guyana's landmass and stymieing the country's economic development in the process.
Venezuela has promulgated spurious decrees claiming our territory, the most recent being on the 26th of May, our independence anniversary, when it issued Decree number 1787 with specified coordinates purporting to annex almost our entire maritime zone. That decree constituted a reassertion of its claim to 5 of Guyana's 10 regions. Guyana rejects the threats and claims by Venezuela, which are in defiance of international law. Guyana resists Venezuela's acts of aggression in defiance of the Charter of the United Nations, which prescribes the peaceful settlement of disputes and proscribes the use of armed force. Mr. President, Guyana's borders with Venezuela were settled 116 years ago. The entire world, except the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, accepts and acknowledges our borders.
President Granger assured the international community of Guyana's commitment to preserving the Caribbean as a zone of peace, renewed pledge that the country will pursue the path of peace, commitment to peaceful settlement of international disputes, has a total confidence in international law, and assurance to resolve this controversy in a matter that is consistent with the UN Charter. Thanks for staying with us. What does the President do all week? Let's take a look inside his diary. Early Thursday morning, President Granger joined in celebrating the 146th birth anniversary of Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, who will forever be known as the preeminent leader of the Indian independence movement in British-ruled India. On the occasion, which also coincides with the United Nations International Day of Nonviolence, President David Granger participated in a simple ceremony which was held to observe the auspicious event at the Promenade Gardens.
The Mahatma was a preeminent political and spiritual leader in India. He played one of the most important roles in India's independence movement. The Mahatma developed a technique of nonviolent agitation which he called satyagraha. He is known for his nonviolent civil disobedience in India and also in South Africa. His activities included the initiation of the non-cooperation movement in 1922, the Satyagraha or Salt March, which started on the 12th of March, 1930. These are important milestones in independence of India, one of the pioneers of the post-war independence movement, of which Guyana itself is a beneficiary.
Later on that morning, the head of state accepted letters of credence from the newly appointed United States of America ambassador, Mr. Perry Holloway. Ambassador Holloway pledged his support to the government to eliminate any impediments to the country's development. He also gave his commitment to work with the administration to ensure that local government elections are held before the end of 2015, possibly with the use of an electronic tabulation system so that the process is done more efficiently.
I look forward to continuing this work that my predecessors carried out in these critical areas and in broadening the friendship and cooperation that already exists between our two governments and people. For the past 14 months, I've relished the opportunity to study Guyana from my vantage point as ambassador designate. I look forward to putting this preparation into practice and to seeing how well the reality on the ground matches the analysis that I was provided in Washington. I watched with great anticipation and at times some degree of trepidation the momentous events of 2014 and 15, which ultimately resulted in the free and fair elections of May 2015. I look forward to working closely with the government to build on Guyana's growing democracy.
Meanwhile, President Granger, in his remarks, welcomed the U.S. renewed commitment to strengthening existing partnerships and to forge new ones, noting that the two countries have enjoyed cordial relations for over 50 years and have collaborated in areas such as energy, health, security, trade, and the promotion of democracy. Still in the throes of the controversy with Venezuela, reports have now surfaced indicating that Suriname's President Bouteflika has renewed his country's interest in the New River Triangle. President Granger addressed these reports during his first press conference locally since taking office.
We feel that this claim is spurious, and we have taken measures in the past to protect our territorial integrity, and we will continue to protect our territorial integrity in that regard. So I read the statement attributed to President Bouteflika, but as far as I'm concerned, it does not change the price of rice.
Suriname's claim to the Corentyne River is still a matter of controversy since there was never any treaty clearly demarcating the boundaries between the two countries. The New River Triangle encompasses a mass of land that is larger than the size of Jamaica.
I think this is not the time and not the place to advance the claim. There is, as you know, historical evidence that the boundary between, the eastern boundary between Brazil, what was then British Guyana and what was then Dutch Guyana, was clearly marked, at least by 1936. And that mark is literally indelible. So what we do know is that the boundaries of all three countries meet there. And they don't meet at the New River, they don't meet anywhere else. So whatever argument the Surinamese government advances has to start with the Kutari. And that's our argument, and that's what we're going to stand by.
In 2007, Suriname's claim to part of Guyana's sea space was dealt with by an international tribunal and determined in Guyana's favor. Today we'll turn your attention to President Granger's love for Guyana's hinterland and his administration's plan to reduce the developmental gap that exists between the coast and the hinterland. It is his belief that Guyana can never truly develop if its hinterland regions are left unattended. His career in the Guyana Defense Force has afforded him the opportunity to travel to places in Guyana that many Guyanese have only had the opportunity to hear of in their lifetime. In almost every speech made by President Granger, there is always some lesson to be told from a visit to some remote part of Guyana and how moved he is to see Guyana's hinterland brought up to par with the coastline.
Your government will ensure that the livelihood of the residents of the hinterland is sustained, that the environment is protected, and that there is a new approach to hinterland and regional administration. Your government, as a start, iterates its commitment to upgrade the 4 hinterland regional administrative centers: Mabaruma in the Barima-Waini region, Bartica in the Kuyuni-Mazaruni region, Madia in the Pataro-Saparuni region, and Lethem in the Rupununi. These will achieve township status before we celebrate our 50th anniversary in Guyana.
The hinterland comprises of over 3/4 of Guyana's overall territory and is home to its first people. The president's many visits to these parts of the country has not only fueled his vision for the development of these parts, but has also birthed new initiatives which will see gaps between the hinterland and coastlands being bridged. That's it for this week. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website www.motp.gov.gy, like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. I'm Janelle Carter. Do have a safe and productive week ahead. Goodbye.